Welcome to the Great Detectives of Old Time Radio. From Boise, Idaho, this is your host, Adam Graham. If you have a comment, email it to me. Box13 at greatdetectives.net. Follow us on Twitter at Radio Detectives and check us out on Instagram, instagram.com/greatdetectives. If you're enjoying the podcast, please follow us using your favorite podcast software. A reminder, as you're making your travel plans, remember to check out JohnnyDollarAir.com. JohnnyDollarAir.com is our Priceline affiliate link. If you make a purchase through that link, part of the purchase price benefits the Great Detectives of Old Time Radio at no additional cost to you. So remember, when making your travel plans, check JohnnyDollarAir.com first. Well, now, it is time for this week's episode of yours truly, Johnny Dollar. The original air date, March 3rd, 1957, and the title is The Meek Memorial Matter.
From Hollywood, it's time now for...
Johnny Dollar.
Where have you been for the past 20 minutes?
In the shower.
For 20 minutes?
Okay, so I'm a shiny dollar.
So you... Oh.
Who's that?
Max Green at Assured Equity.
Oh, hi, Max. What's on your mind?
7 years ago...
Our fathers brought forth, but that doesn't answer my question.
Johnny, you ever hear of the Meeks?
New England family, stowed away on the Mayflower, speak only to their money.
That's the Meeks.
What about them?
No, not about them. It's about Mariah Meek and Lincoln's Gettysburg Address. She's lost her copy of it.
Well, it shouldn't be hard to find her another one.
That's where you're wrong, Johnny.
Huh?
It would be very hard. Might cost us $100,000.
Bob Bailey in the exciting adventures of the man with the action-packed expense account, America's fabulous freelance insurance investigator.
Yours truly, Johnny Dollar. Expense account submitted by Special Investigator Johnny Dollar to the Assured Equity and Trust Company, 325 Scott Avenue, Hartford, Connecticut. The following is an account of expenses incurred during my investigation of the Meek Memorial matter. Expense account item 1, $1.90, cab from my apartment to Max Green's office. He was standing in a haze of cigar smoke, ashes on his vest, and a worried look on his face.
Oh, good morning, Johnny. Oh, you want a cigar?
Oh, no, thanks.
Then sit up. Excuse me. Listen, Johnny, what do you know about that speech that Lincoln made at Gettysburg?
Well, I had to memorize it in school like every other kid.
All right, you know how many words are in it?
Maybe a couple of hundred. Why?
Wait a minute, it's in this book. Here, it's page 143. Speech is printed here exactly as Mr. Lincoln released it to the newspapers after the Gettysburg Address. You find it?
Yeah, but now what do you...
Okay, total number of words, 268.
Oh.
But the first two drafts of that speech, including the one he read that day, contained only 266 words.
So he padded his part.
That's right. 2 more words.
Mm-hmm. How come?
Oh, according to the historians, Lincoln ad-libbed the 2 additional words at the time he read it. Later on, when he made 3 new copies of the speech, he included those 2 words. You with me so far?
Keep going, Max.
Yeah, all right. Right down at the end of it, just before of the people, by the people, where he said that this nation under God shall have a new birth of freedom, the words under God do not appear in the first 2 drafts he wrote.
Yeah. Well, this is all very interesting, Max, but I still don't see what it is or what it has to do with me.
Well, Mariah Meek's copy has disappeared.
Oh?
And, Johnny, that copy happens to contain just 266 words.
You mean she owns one of the first 2 original drafts?
Handwritten by Mr. Lincoln himself while he was on the train riding to Gettysburg.
Wowee.
Yeah. Which is, of course, why we insured it for the full amount it cost her, which is $100,000 even.
Of course, you made sure it was authentic before you issued the policy.
Naturally.
Well, who'd she buy it from?
An antique dealer down in Richmond, Virginia, a fellow named Jason Penrod.
Uh-huh. Well, where's she been keeping it?
Under glass. In the Meek Memorial.
What's that?
Well, she collects Americana, so she had a museum built to keep it in, and she calls it the Meek Memorial.
Follows?
Follows. Also follows the most expensive item in the collection, the Gettysburg Address, would be the one to disappear.
Oh, you're just an old pessimist, Max. You think somebody lifted it?
What do you think? It walked out by itself?
Okay. So what are you going to do about it?
Well, we're going to run newspaper ads. We're going to offer a $10,000 reward for information leading to its return. If anyone answers it, you let me know where you'll be, and I'll refer them to you.
Good. When was it taken?
The night before last.
Is there any kind of market for something that rare?
It's hard to say, Johnny. A hot camera would be easier to peddle, sure. But a good many wealthy people, like Mrs. Meek, they make a hobby of collecting things, antiques, objects of art, etchings.
But whoever took this, or buys it from the thief, couldn't just let everybody see it.
Well, it wouldn't matter to some people. They take it and put it in the vault and keep it there.
Then what's the point in having it around?
Pride of possession. You got something no other collector could own.
And, of course, it might not have really disappeared at all.
You're thinking of fraud?
$100,000 is a lot of cash. Expense account item 2, $1.90, cab fare back to my apartment. I wasn't particularly intrigued by this assignment. Rare documents, like anything else antique, have always seemed to be just one step from decay. And that sometimes goes for the people who collect such things. Item 3, $16.10, transportation, including a round-trip ticket, Hartford to New Bedford, and cab fare to the Whalers Hotel. There was a convention in town, so I was lucky to get a room. After checking in, I called the Meek residence. Mrs. Meek was expecting me and said she'd have her car pick me up. I had just put down the phone when someone knocked on the door.
You in there?
Depends on what you're looking for.
Oh, looking for Mr. J.
Jay, did you say? Nobody by that name here.
Oh, yeah. I see. I guess I got the wrong room.
Yeah, well, why don't you ask down at the desk?
Huh? Yeah. Oh, sure. Yeah.
Funny. Or is it? I cracked the door open again. Watched him walk to the stairs. Then I took the elevator down the 8 flights to the lobby. Half an hour later, I was in the back seat of the Meek limousine, heading toward the home out on Buzzards Bay. It was a big, sprawling frame building facing on the beach. About 50 yards behind it, closer to the road, was the Meek Memorial Museum. I was starting up the front steps when the door opened.
Mr. Dollar?
That's right.
I'm Paul Meek. I understand you have an appointment with my grandmother.
Right again.
Now, come in, please. She's waiting for you upstairs in the sitting room.
Okay, thanks.
Before you go up, I wonder if I could have a few words with you.
Why not?
In here, then. You've never met my grandmother, have you?
No, I haven't had that pleasure.
Some people consider it a dubious one, Mr. Dollar.
Oh?
Mr. Dollar, this is my wife, Janice.
Mrs. Meek?
Hi. How about a drink?
Thanks, not just now.
How about you, old stick in the mud? You want another one?
After a bit, Janice. And if I were you, I wouldn't have any more.
But you're not me, are you?
You will have to excuse my wife, Mr. Dollar. We've both been under a severe strain since moving here. Grandmother is blind, you know.
No, I didn't know.
Her sight began failing about 4 years ago. I'm surprised the insurance agent didn't tell you.
Well, Mr. Green was so concerned over the theft of the Lincoln manuscript, I imagine it slipped his mind.
Mm-hmm. And just how do you intend to locate that manuscript?
I'm not so sure that I can.
It'd be a pity if you could.
Be just awful.
It's grandmother's prized possession. She hasn't been herself since it was stolen. And being quite elderly, well, we're all very much concerned.
Oh, my, yes. We're afraid she might die and leave us all that lovely money.
Janice.
It's the truth. You see, Paul and I don't have any money of our own, Mr. Dollar. We'll never have any until she does die. Instead of giving it to us now while we're young, you know what she does with it? Spends it buying junk for that silly old museum.
Now, look.
That's gratitude, isn't it? I bathe her, feed her rubber feet, and do all her dirty work.
Janice, you've said quite enough. Mr. Dollar isn't interested in our personal problems.
Oh, stick in the mud. All right. I'll be in the den if you want me. And that's the funniest thing I've said all day. If you want me.
I'm sorry. She doesn't mean half of what she says. That's grandmother's signal.
Then hadn't we better go up?
Yes, we'd better.
We went up the broad staircase, through a hall, and into a bright, sunny room. Wrapped in an old kimono and shawl, Martha Meek sat in an invalid chair, facing the ocean. Paul introduced us, then sat down quietly near the door.
Paul? Paul, I know you're there. Now answer me.
Yes, Grandmother.
You go on downstairs. I want to talk with Mr. Dollar in private.
Whatever you say.
And close that door. Don't mind my back, Mr. Dollar. I couldn't see you if I looked into your face. Now then, when are you going to arrest that crook and bring my Lincoln speech back to me?
Well, I'm going to need a lot of help and information, Mrs. Meek.
Mm-hmm. What kind of information?
Mostly about the museum.
Like what?
Well, do you know who was in there the night the manuscript disappeared?
Certainly. The dirty robber was.
Anyone else?
Well, old Pete's always there. Supposed to be guarding the place, but he didn't do a very good job the other night. Got himself slugged.
Does he live on the grounds?
Yes. I brought him over from Naples 10 years ago. He was my guide in Italy. Showed me around so nice I decided to bring him back.
Tell me, is the memorial open to the public?
It was going to be. I intended it to be once. But when my eyes... No, Mr. Dollar, I keep it locked most of the time.
Uh-huh. And who discovered the manuscript was missing?
Pete did, I guess. At least when he recovered, he ran yelling bloody murder up here to the house. Everybody went down to see what had happened. Everybody but me. They left me all to myself.
Were there any strangers here in the house that night, Mrs. Meek? Anyone beside the servants and your grandson and his wife?
One person, but he's no stranger.
Who's that?
Jason Penrod from Richmond. He's an art dealer. We were discussing some business.
May I, ask what kind of business?
It has nothing to do with you or the people you work for.
Sorry. Where can I find Mr. Penrod?
He's staying here now. If he isn't in his room, then he's most likely out in the memorial. Now, that's enough questions. You, give me a cigarette.
Ma'am?
What's the matter? You deaf? Give me a cigarette before Paul with that snoopy wife of his comes prowling around.
All right, sure.
Light me.
Yeah.
Well, you want any more information, Pete's the one to talk to.
All right, thanks. But what about your son and daughter-in-law? Were they inside the house at the time of the robbery?
You don't suspect them, do you?
Right now, I suspect everybody, Mrs. Meek.
Even me?
Yes, ma'am. Even you.
Well, bless you, boy.
I found Pete Vesuvio trimming the shrubbery just outside the memorial building. He seemed quite willing to talk to me.
How you say what happened to me, mister? I'm hit out?
Knocked out, Pete.
Si, senor. And because of this, I do not see anything.
Nothing at all, huh?
Please, mister, do not use the insult. I am American citizen, first papers. And because of the kindness of my patron, I will soon be second papers. I know by heart the Constitution, United States, the Gettysburg Address, pledge allegiance to my flag.
Yeah.
You know how I know that these things which help me be citizen? Because of my lady. She's letting me work in a place where great papers are for me to read. Because of her, I would not hide anything, mister.
Okay, Pete, okay. I'm convinced.
But I'm sorry I cannot help you, mister.
Well, it's not your fault.
Hey, you like to hear me say Gettysburg Address?
Well...
Do it very good. Learn it right from President's own writing.
Some other time, Pete. Right now, I have to find Mr. Penrod.
Oh, he's inside, mister. Counting the treasures. All of the beautiful things a lady can no longer see. You'll find him in Section L, senor.
I found the small, neat-appearing art dealer just where Pete had said he'd be, peering into a glass case crowded with Derringer pistols. He had a notebook under his arm and seemed to be making some sort of inventory.
Oh, dear. You gave me quite a fright, sir.
Oh, I'm sorry. Well, I wish I could concentrate like that.
Oh, well, there's nothing more interesting to me than these fine old pistol things. What histories they must have, Mr.
Dollar. Johnny Dollar.
Oh, yes, the insurance investigator. Paul told me you were wandering about the place. I suppose you'd like to ask me some questions, hmm?
If you don't mind.
Oh, no, goodness, no.
I understand you were with Mrs. Meek the night of the robbery.
That is correct, sir. We heard the shouting. We ran out here just as fast as we could. I was the one who discovered the manuscript was missing.
You have any idea how the thief got in here?
No, sir, no. Unless someone forgot to lock the front door, or unless he had a key.
Well, has Mrs. Meek given out many of the keys?
Well, in my opinion, too many. Even I have one.
What about Paul Meek and his wife?
No, I don't think so. Well, they really aren't interested in the museum at all, Mr. Dollar.
Oh. Mr. Penrod, I understand you're quite an authority on antique art and things like that.
Well,
Isn't taking inventory a little beneath your position?
Well, I suppose it is, Mr. Dollar. Last week when I received dear Mariah's wire asking me to do it, I simply couldn't refuse. She's been such a good customer of mine. Well,
yes. You have any idea who might have wanted the Lincoln manuscript?
Well, I know several persons who'd love to have it. Give most anything, but I don't know anyone with the nerve to break in here and take it by force.
You remember where Paul Meek and his wife were when you heard Pete shouting?
They were right in here when I arrived.
I see. Well, thanks for... Oh, just one more thing.
Oh, yes?
If you'd stolen the manuscript...
Mr. Dollar.
A hypothetical question, Mr. Penrod. But if you had, and you wanted to sell it at a good price with the least danger of being caught, how would you go about it?
Well, I take it abroad, of course. I put it on the open market over there.
Huh. You aren't planning on going abroad soon, are you, Mr. Penrod?
Oh, gracious, no.
You know anyone who is? Anyone who,
Who didn't Paul and Janice tell you? They're flying to Paris Wednesday night.
I left the memorial and walked back to the house. The Meeks were in the study, engaged in their favorite pastime. When I told them what the art dealer had said, Paul set down his glass long enough to confirm the fact that they did have reservations and insisted that he had a logical explanation for not having told me of those plans earlier.
Very logical explanation, Mr. Dollar.
Let me handle this, Janice, please.
Sure. Drink, Johnny?
No, first I want to hear that explanation, if you don't mind, Paul.
Of course I don't mind. Janice and me were fed up.
Why didn't you tell me about the plane reservations?
Well, why should I have? I'm not even sure I'm going to use them.
Oh?
Grandmother's upset enough over losing that manuscript. Something else might... Well, anyhow, if the manuscript doesn't turn up within 48 hours, we're canceling our trip.
Oh, no, please.
Sorry, Janice, but that's the way it's got to be.
She did it.
What do you mean?
It's an act, don't you see? Jason Penrod told her we were going to leave, so she had him hide the manuscript. And now this thing about her being so upset and having such a weak heart. It's an act to keep her precious darling boy tied to her apron strings.
I don't believe that.
Well, just wait. You will.
Anything else, Dollar?
What does a trip to Paris cost, Paul?
Well, it's not inexpensive.
Your wife was complaining about being so broke.
Haven't you ever heard of flying now and paying later?
We have friends in Paris, Dollar. It won't cost as much to live once we get there. And we'll worry about paying for our ticket when we get back.
Any other questions, Mr. Snooper?
Yeah. Later. It was after 7 when I finally got back to my hotel room. I ordered a drink and tried to make some kind of sense out of the information I'd gathered during the day. But it all added up to 0. I called Hartford and asked Max Green to look into the Meek finances. Then I dressed for dinner. I was about to go downstairs when the phone rang. Johnny Dollar.
Mr. Dollar, I was told to call you.
Yeah?
It's about the ad.
The ad?
In tonight's paper about something missing from a certain memorial.
Go on.
Well, I called Hartford Collect. They said to call you.
Yeah, that's right. Who is this?
My name's not important, Dollar, but that 10 grand reward is.
You think you can earn it?
You meet me tonight, you'll see.
Where?
In the alley behind the Bourne Whaling Museum. Be there at 9:30 and be alone. You got it?
Yeah, I got it. Expense account item 4, 85 cents cab fare from my hotel to the Bourne Whaling Museum. I don't like wandering around dark alleys at night, alone in a strange town. It isn't the best way to stay alive. But at 9:29, I passed the old whaling museum and started down the alley. It was dark, no moon, and it was very quiet. I was about 20 yards in from the street when I saw him, curled up in a ball like he had a stomachache, only he didn't. because somebody had made him very dead. I struck a match and turned him over. I'd only seen him once before, but I didn't have any trouble remembering where it had been. Right after I'd checked in, he knocked on my hotel room door. By mistake. At least that's what he'd said. After giving a statement to the local police who identified him, I went back to my hotel.
Evening, Mr. Dollar.
Yeah, say, look, I know it's probably against all your rules, but who had my room just before I checked in?
Oh, I couldn't disclose that information, sir. Sorry.
Oh, well, so am I. It'd mean a lot for me to know. Maybe even $5 worth.
Well, well, sir, if it's that important. Thank you. Now, let's see. Yes, here it is. Can you read his signature, Mr. Dollar?
Yeah, thanks. Just fine. The name I'd seen scrawled on the hotel register wasn't important now. At least not without something more to back it up. There was no law against checking out of a hotel, but there was a law against murder, if it could be proven. And that would be hard to do without finding a motive. So I went back to the Meek house to look for it. I paid off the taxi, that's item 5, and started up the front steps.
Oh, hi, Johnny. I thought it might be you.
That's so?
Mm-hmm. I hope you aren't mad at me for the things I said today.
No, not at all.
I've been a very bad girl. But everything's going to be all right now.
It is.
Mm-hmm. Or haven't you heard?
Heard what?
About dear old grandmother. She's had a real bad stroke. Isn't expected to live.
You, aren't a bit sorry, are you?
Would you be, if you were me?
Dollar, you mind coming up here?
No, not a bit, Paul.
I'm trying to reach you at your hotel. Thank goodness you've come here. Did Janice tell you?
Yeah. How is she?
Bad. Doctor's given up. Says it's only a matter of hours. She told me to send for you, Mr. Dollar.
Oh?
I don't know why. I've never been able to figure out a lot of things she did.
All right, where is she?
In there. Old Pete's with her, but go on in.
Thanks.
With a increased devotion to that cause for which they here gave her the last...
Who is it?
Oh, it's Mr. Dollar, my lady.
Hello, Mrs. Meek.
Oh, thank you for coming, Mr. Dollar.
I go now.
No, wait. Mr. Dollar, you have a moment, haven't you?
Of course.
I promised Pete the last time I visited the museum. I promised I'd let him recite some of the things he's learned while working there. Haven't been able to keep that promise till now. Go on, Pete. Please.
Yes, my lady. They here gave her the last full measure of devotion. That we here highly resolve that these dead shall not have died in vain. That this nation under God shall have a new birth of freedom, and that the government of the people, by the people, for the people, shall not perish from the earth.
Thank you. That was wonderful.
Thank you, my lady. Now I go.
Well, Mr. Dollar, I have a confession to make to you.
Yes?
I lied to you.
Oh, I'm sure it wasn't a very big lie, Mrs. Meek.
Oh, but it was. I told you the business Mr. Penrod and I were discussing the night of the burglary.
Yes?
I told you it had nothing to do with you or the people you work for, remember?
Yes, ma'am.
Well, that was a lie. I'm broke, Mr. Dollar. All I have left in the world is this house and the things in the memorial.
I see.
That's why I sent for Jason Penrod. He purchased most of my treasures for me. He's evaluating them now, so Paul and Janice will know what they're worth when they go to sell them, which they'll do immediately.
Mrs. Meek, don't you think you should try to rest now?
Will you give me a cigarette?
No, ma'am. Sorry. And you must rest.
There isn't much else to do, is there? Good night, Mr. Dollar.
Outside in the hall, Paul and Janice Meek were talking quietly to Jason Penrod. Off in the corner, standing with his back to the others, was Pete Vesuvio.
Mr. Dollar,
She's resting quietly.
Oh, Dio grazie.
Why did you lie to me, Pete?
What? I never lied to nobody. Who say I did?
I say you did.
You're crazy, mister. What lie I tell you?
You said you learned the Gettysburg Address right from Mr. Lincoln's own writing in the museum.
That's no lie. What's the matter? You don't believe that, mister?
I believe you, Pete. But I just had to be sure. Come on, let's join the others, shall we?
Well, good evening, Mr. Dollar.
Mr. Penrod?
Tell you any of the family secrets, Johnny?
Not too many.
You learn anything in there you didn't know before?
Yeah? I know which one of you stole the Lincoln manuscript.
One of us?
Why, you're crazy, Dollar. We were all in the house at the time it happened.
That's right. But one of you hired a little man named Leo Jones to do your dirty work. Jones called me earlier this evening. He was going to tell me which one of you it was. Evidently, he didn't like the deal he was getting. What was he doing, Penrod? Trying to blackmail you?
What are you talking about? I don't know any Leo Jones.
Then why did he come around to my hotel room this morning? The same room you just checked out of.
Well, that doesn't mean a thing. I imagine several persons have been to that room today.
Sure, but they're still alive. Now, let's get to the phony Lincoln manuscript.
Phony manuscript?
It wasn't phony, Mr. Dollar.
Wasn't it? Well, you correct me if I'm wrong, Penrod. After Mrs. Meek purchased one of the first 2 drafts of Mr. Lincoln's Gettysburg Address, she started losing her sight. When she closed the museum to the public, you saw a chance to make yourself another $100,000 sale. So you switched copies of the manuscript, replacing that draft with one containing the words, "Under God," which isn't worth anything close to $100,000.
What do you mean, Dollar?
All right, let me quote. That this nation, under God, shall have a new birth of freedom, and so on.
What?
The phrase, "under God," was not in the manuscript he sold your grandmother, but it was in the copy old Pete has been studying in the museum. Right, Mr. Penrod?
All of you stay right where you are. You get what Jones got.
Mr. Dollar.
He won't go far, Pete.
But I am the guard. The lady will want me to stop him.
Pete, come back here.
Keep away from me.
Hey! Oh!
Come on.
Oh.
You tell the lady. I am a better guard now. Much better. See, senor?
Yes, Pete.
I did good.
You did fine. Pete Vesuvio will live to apply for his second papers. And in time, probably open a spaghetti joint in New Bedford. Penrod will be tried for murder. As yet, he hasn't disclosed the name of the person who purchased the stolen manuscript. But in time, I'm sure he will. As for the Meeks, well, Mariah passed on later that night. But as she said, there was nothing left for her but to rest. Expense account total, including hotel and numerous incidentals, $98.30. Yours truly, Johnny Dollar.
Johnny Dollar has come to you through the worldwide facilities of the United States Armed Forces Radio and Television Service.
Welcome back. A good mystery. I love the setup of the Gettysburg Address and how the whole episode was centered on this little bit of historical trivia. I do wonder whether this episode might have been commissioned originally to be aired just before Lincoln's birthday. That would have been the episode that aired on the 10th, the Templeton matter. Lincoln's birthday, of course, on February the 12th. And then it might just not have been able to be completed for some reason, whether on the writing or production end. Regardless, if that had been the case, CBS had commissioned it and paid for it, and they wouldn't say, yeah, that's okay, we'll just wait till next year, because you don't know if you're going to still be on the air next year. We're also given some intriguing suspects, and I also thought Pete was a good character, and Jack Moyles did a great job bringing him to life. Now, there was a lost episode and a preemption between the Templeton matter and this episode. The Golden Touch matter is the first missing episode of the Bob Bailey half-hour era from February 17th of 57, and the February 24th program was preempted. Well, now we turn to listener comments and feedback, and have a email I received from Joseph, who writes, I discovered your podcast a few years ago, and I'm grateful that you've archived so many shows. I will confess that I've been going through old archives and not anything really up to date. But recently I stumbled across a podcast that was produced maybe last year, and I was happy that you are still doing this after how long. I'm guessing you have about 15 years invested, because I think I heard a reference to 2010 during one podcast. I've noted that you don't like to timestamp your commentaries. I'm not complaining, just making an observation. A few more observations, if you don't mind. Some of your commentaries are a bit too short. I can't imagine trying to write one for every program, and there must be a plethora of shows that you may not particularly enjoy or have any interest in commenting on in real depth. But after listening to quite a number of them, covering many different shows over many varied years, the trend seems to be the norm. Speaking just for myself, I often wished you would have given much more analysis and details in a series like Barry Craig, Confidential Investigator. I don't expect you to go back and expand the commentaries from years gone by. I'm just voicing my disappointment at not hearing more, particularly when I have a viewpoint on a particular episode that's seemingly not on your radar. He highlights a particular episode. I won't read his comments on that because we played the episode some time back. I think back in 2012 or something like that. And he concludes, there's a lot more to nitpick, but I wanted to make the point that sometimes the listener wants to hear more than the 60 seconds of quick commentary. Yes, I've heard you give some critical views at time during the Barry Craig series. You have some very nice in-depth descriptions of William Gargan, which was very appreciated because I did not know him at all prior to me listening. Okay, so I think I exhausted that topic pretty well. I've also noticed most of the comments from listeners are very short. I have to imagine that most are edited. I can't be the only one who likes to write lengthy emails. I may be abnormal with this opinion, but I'd rather hear a longer email, especially if the listener has something interesting to say. One last comment, and this was the cause for me writing. I've heard yours truly, Johnny Dollar, on different podcasts and radio theater nostalgic broadcasts. For the life of me, I can't understand why everyone plays the extremely long theme music until the very last note. Don't get me wrong, the music is very nice and it is expertly performed, but it is clear to this novice that it is filler to reach the time needed for a 15-minute or a 30-minute time block. To be fair, I think I may have heard you fade the show out a little early once, but speaking of longer commentary, I think the theme music is an elephant in the room that should be addressed. In your podcast here in the 21st century, there's no reason to play every note, as you don't have radio broadcasting constraints, and the instrumental tune routinely is awkwardly repeated ad nauseum. All of this brings up the items that can be incorporated into a commentary. Namely, why are the scripts so short that the lengthy theme music is so consistently necessary? The writing and acting seem very competent, and yet there's always a lengthy gap of time. Okay, I'm done. Thank you for listening. Well, I did actually email him back, but I think it's raised some points that are worth discussing. First of all, I've actually been at this, going back to the old Time Dragnet podcast, 17 years in March, with the 15th anniversary of Great Detectives coming up in October. Now, in terms of commentaries, I think this is probably a good one to address it on, because yesterday I went on for, I think, like a good 6 or 7 minutes just talking about Mr. Keene. I did not have nearly as much to say about Johnny Dollar, and I think there are, couple of reasons. The first is sometimes an episode doesn't leave you a whole lot to talk about properly. It is well done, it is well written, but there's nothing that stands out. There's not some level of profundity like you might get with something like the Nick Shern matter, or I believe the Forbes matter. Sometimes it's just a good, diverting, entertaining story, and there's very minimal stuff to say. And I think one way that I've been able to avoid burning out is if I don't have a lot to say, then I don't say it. I think if you go into things and you're like, okay, I have to be super profound or super funny on every single episode, then one, it's not going to come off as authentically experiencing the podcast, and two, it's just going to burn you out, because sometimes you just don't have the material. And sometimes I won't catch anything, but then that will give an opportunity for a listener to go ahead and respond. And I will say, you could sit there and go through and nitpick like everything in a particular episode. And I try not to do that, because I don't think that that's something that people find entertaining. I don't want to be like the cinema sins of old time radio. I will also say that one thing that may have affected, particularly if you're listening to earlier commentaries, is that I was also working a full-time job, and oftentimes I would be recording commentaries quite late at night or early morning after, a long day of work and other concerns and interests. So maybe I didn't catch some things that I might have if I had listened to them today. I actually didn't start writing out my commentary until after I left my full-time job, when I've just started to kind of gather my thoughts a bit more in the past 15 months or so. In terms of listener comments, some are long. I think we get longer emails like Joseph sent. It varies. Sometimes we'll get 1, 2, 3, maybe 4 in a month. And then sometimes we'll go like a month or two without hearing hardly anything. I think that during the summer, July and most of August, I often don't hear practically anything, because everybody's out just enjoying the weather, and if they're just kind of listening to the podcast, and little time to send in anything detailed for very understandable reasons. Sometimes, just like me, people don't have a lot to say, like, great episode. Well, thank you. Now, in terms of the long theme music, I think that unless I've got a good reason, there's a strong preference for playing episodes as is. And there's also the fact that if I go ahead and I were to cut the theme music out, then people who wanted to enjoy it can't. But if people don't want to hear the theme music, they can skip seconds or they can fast forward. And I guess from my perspective, long theme music has never really been anything that bothers me, just because I grew up watching 80s television. You know, you watch things like the A-Team or Magnum P.I., and, you know, you sit there and you sit through the end credits. Now, we don't have, like, the cheesy freeze-frame visuals, and I will say that while I like the Johnny Dollar theme, it's not quite the absolute bangers that both Magnum P.I. and A-Team themes were back in the 80s, but few things are. I personally tend to be a long theme traditionalist when it comes to TV themes, because we've seen a massive contraction in the length of themes, but it's not really led to longer TV episodes. It's just led to more commercials. And I tend to think the longer theme sort of approach is that you're sitting down to experience something, you're taking time and you're relaxing. And you watch the opening theme and the closing theme because it's part of the experience. It's not a waste. You're just sitting there chilling out, enjoying the experience. I remember once that I decided to watch 2 episodes of the Rockford Files back to back. And there was a pop-up from the streaming service to give me the option to skip intro. And I said out loud, "Don't you dare. You do not skip the Rockford Files opening theme. That's not done. At least as far as I'm concerned." So, yeah, I'm all pro long theme, and I think it's just part of the experience. But I do appreciate the email, and I also love getting an email from someone who thought that I was not doing long enough commentaries. That's actually a very nice thing to say, and in contrast to some of the other things that come across my desk. So thank you so much for the email, Joseph. So glad that you found us. And then we have a new review on the Apple Podcast Store of our Johnny Dollar feed. Audrey writes up in Canada, "Bob Bailey as Johnny Dollar's my favorite. I just don't like how the people always sound the same, but that might be me anyways. Bye." Well, thank you so much, Audrey. And you might be referring to, I think, all of the actors who, keep playing roles each week. And it's really is a sort of rep company feel where you have the same actors on every 2 or 3 weeks. And it's kind of different, I think, than a lot of our modern experience with television, where if, you're going to have someone come back as another character, it's probably going to be a year or 2 apart. But thank you so much. Appreciate the kind reviews that are left on the Apple Podcast Store. And that will actually do it for today. If you're enjoying the podcast, please follow us using your favorite podcast software. And if you're enjoying the podcast on YouTube, be sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and mark the notification bell. We will be back next Wednesday as we bring you Broadway's My Beat, and then we'll be back next Friday with another episode of yours truly, Johnny Dollar. But join us back here tomorrow for Dragnet Wear.
School out for the day?
Yes, it is.
Guess we'll have to wait till morning to interview the victim.
The first class is at 8 o'clock. I'll have the girls assemble in the classroom next to my office.
All right, Mr. Jason. Thank you.
I'll be right back, Doris. See you gentlemen out.
Looks like the rally's just breaking up, huh?
3 o'clock now. The game's at 3:30.
The kids certainly jam up the corridor. Come on. Let us through here. Let us through, please.
All right. The rest of you go about your business. Go on now.
What's the matter, young lady? What's the trouble?
Patty Larson, she's fainted.
What's the matter with her?
Look at her dress. It's covered with blood.
I hope you'll be with us then. In the meantime, send your comments to box13@greatdetectives.net. Follow us on Twitter at Radio Detectives and check us out on Instagram, instagram.com/greatdetectives. From Boise, Idaho, this is your host, Adam Graham, signing off.